My name is Mary Maxine Luber, and this is my final time introducing myself with my wildly long title of Patron Services Manager of Recruitment, Training, and Accessibility. I now am the much shorter Community Engagement Manager. So happy to be with you all today. Oh, thanks. And before we get rolling, I just want to ask that you please write down any questions that you have today. Can our team members who have the index cards and pens stand up or wave for us? So you can track one of those folks down between sessions. You can also return your questions to them. At the end of today's presentations, we will answer some of those, and any we don't get to, we'll cover in an upcoming newsletter. So please write down any burning questions that you have today. And now, let's dive right into access and inclusion best practices here at the Kauffman Center, which is all about everything that we can do to make sure that we are actualizing our mission. Our vision of enriching the lives of everyone in our community through extraordinary and diverse performing arts experiences. So, how do we go about doing that? Today, we'll talk about best practices for welcoming folks with disabilities. We'll review all of the accessibility services that we have here at the Kauffman Center, and we'll also think through ways that we can promote inclusivity in all that we do. You can follow along in the Mary Maxine section of your handouts today, and this is handout number 1. And we are going to start by acknowledging the blind spots that all people have, so let's watch a short video together.
Are you seriously considering her as a She's a woman. That's not me. I'm not like that. You call it an honest mistake. Science calls it blind spot. Our unconscious mind is a mysterious and powerful thing. It makes 90% of our decisions without us even knowing it. Our brains are overloaded with 11 million pieces of information every second. Yet we can only process about 40 of them. So we're wired to make cognitive shortcuts using past experiences to make assumptions. And you know what happens when we assume? Unconscious mind can put us on autopilot, determining where we sit, who we eat lunch with, who we turn to for advice, and who we choose to offer a helping hand. Living our lives with blind spots put us in a tunnel. Same point of view, same decisions, same outcomes. We can find ourselves trapped in the land of snap judgments and misconceptions. We've all been on both the giving and receiving end of blind spots. Think about it. Who's talented? Who's able? Can I trust? Who belongs? Well, blind spots are part of the human condition. Our choices have consequences for us and the people we interact with. By accepting the blind spots exist, it's not. Imagine what possibilities exist if we could do it all over again. Different perspectives, inclusive relationships, diverse networks, better outcomes. Seeing people for who they really are. People like you, with unlimited potential. We all have blind spots. Once you accept that you have them, you can choose to do something with it. It's time to check in your blind spots and focus on what's possible.
All right, so after watching that, let's do a quick exercise together. Could everyone please close their eyes for just a few seconds? Okay, so I would love for you to think about this just to yourself, no need to share out loud. I want you to envision a Kauffman Center patron. Who comes to mind? What do they look like? How old are they? What are they wearing? Where do they live in the city? Who did they come to the performance with? Okay, you can go ahead and open your eyes. And I bet if we went down the row right now, all across the room, we would have a pretty big variety. And that's because we don't host a single kind of performance here. And even if we did, People from all walks of life are fans of music and dance and theater and lecture series that we offer here at the Kauffman Center. There's not a single kind of person in our patron base. Everyone is unique and brings their own experiences and stories to this space while they are here attending a myriad of performing arts mediums. So we want to ensure that everyone, and we mean everyone, so patrons of all abilities, ages, appearances, ethnicities, gender identities, sexual orientations, races, religions, belief systems, feels entirely, genuinely welcome. But there are many ways that our blind spots come into play in the process, despite our best intentions. So, anytime we think that we can understand who a person is, why they're here, how often they come here, how they're going to act while they're here, what they need from us, just by looking at them, we're operating on those blind spots and we're making assumptions. That could come across in the way that we treat someone directly, or even the things that we say about them to others when we think they're out of earshot. So, it could be making broad statements about a group of people, like, oh, you just know this kind of audience will be late. It could be operating on hurtful stereotypes. Hope they brought in extra security tonight. Or, well, you know how they are. It could be suggesting that there is only one way to express yourself. Well, she clearly didn't get the dress code. Or deciding who gets to be an actual or typical patron. Oh, he doesn't come here often. Or she looks like she's a seasoned subscriber. Instead of making those assumptions, we can be introspective. So we can bring an awareness of our own blind spots to each interaction. That means avoiding making broad statements or decisions about what an audience makeup will be for a performance, how a certain kind of person acts or thinks, that there's something wrong with the way someone dresses or presents themselves, and that someone has to enjoy music and dance the exact same way. Not only is that very boring and counterproductive to the magic of the performing arts that we all love so much, it can also be really harmful. So, everyone in this room and everyone who comes into our building deserves to have the same level of dignity and respect extended to them. And that includes our fellow volunteers, staff members, and patrons. Another way that we can promote inclusivity is to put our conscious mind in the driver's seat and not even give our blind spots the opportunity to guide our decision making. So, in action, that can look like knowing our policies and procedures, which are covered in our very short, concise volunteer handbook. It's only 108 pages this year, uh, and in all of our training classes as well. And then we want to follow those policies and procedures without exception. So if we know our operations well and we execute them the same way, no matter who's in the building that day, we don't need to decide who gets to bend the house rules or receive some kind of special treatment. So, for example, let's say that a presenting organization has a very strict late seating policy. If we have two separate groups who come up to the mezzanine and ask to be let in anyway, and one volunteer at this door says, oh, come on, let me just sneak you in, and the volunteer at the next door over maintains the late seating policy as intended, it could seem to the group that wasn't let in that there was a reason, perhaps one rooted in bias, since a special allowance was not made for them. If we simply follow our policies and procedures, we don't need to worry that our blind spots have potentially decided that someone was more relatable, trustworthy, or deserving of an exception. And finally, a strategy for promoting inclusivity in all that we do is something that you all already do so very well. So it's as simple as bringing our kindest, most positive, most flexible, most gracious selves to every shift. Those of you who have worked student matinees with me in the morning, any student matinee folks in the room here? Oh, a whole bunch of you. So you know all about field trip energy, which means that we want to bring our biggest smiles and our most positive attitudes because coming to the Kauffman Center is so, so special, whether it's your first time here or your 500th time here. So this gorgeous building and all the special things that happen on these stages should produce joy and wonder and awe for everyone. And we can make it our personal mission to not speak unkindly or negatively about anyone. Instead, we can make each person feel like this space was built specifically for them, because according to Mrs. K's vision for the Kauffman Center, it was. And in that same vein, let's talk about accessibility best practices or concepts to keep in mind when welcoming patrons with disabilities. So you can follow along with these 5 concepts in handout number 2 of the Mary Maxine section. So, first up, we have before you do anything, ask if you may assist. So, it's crucial that we only handle a person's device or provide assistance if they have explicitly invited us to do so. So, it's also important that if someone does let us handle their mobility device, that could be like a wheelchair, walker, we do so with the utmost care and we let them know exactly where we're placing it and how they can be reunited with it. So let's say a patron is using a walker and they are transferring into one of these theater seats. We would need to move the walker outside of the hall because otherwise it would be in an emergency egress pathway, right? So our steps would be to one, explain to the patron why we need to move it. It's an emergency egress pathway and would be unsafe to leave it here. Two, we want to ask if we can move it or if they prefer to do it themselves or have a companion do it. And three, we want to let them know that we will deliver it to them at intermission, at the end of the performance, and if an emergency situation occurs. I like to think about it this way. Most folks who use these aids consider them to be an extension of their body. If someone is wearing glasses, would you ever just take them off of their face? I heard one no. I need to hear 200 no's right now, folks. We're not taking anyone's glasses. People are clutching theirs right now in the audience. So no, of course we wouldn't take someone's glasses. Same thing with like a prosthetic limb, right? We would never just pull on it out of nowhere, right? We would never take it and hide it and not tell them where it is. We want to place that same level of care and respect on all mobility devices and aids, right? All right. And if someone says they don't need assistance, we just need to graciously accept and respect their decision. Remember that they navigate the world with a disability every single day, so they are the experts here. All right, let's put some parameters on our assistance. So, if you were invited to assist in these ways and you're able to, you can totally hold the door open for someone, of course, push a wheelchair, lend an arm if a person who's blind or low vision asks you to help guide them, and help people find their way. That's just good patron service, right? But if a patron asks us to assist them in these ways, we need to politely decline. So even if you're comfortable, maybe you've been a caretaker or you're in the healthcare industry, even so, no Kauffman Center staff members or volunteers may help someone transfer in or out of a wheelchair or provide stability to a patron. So similarly, we cannot assist a patron in the restroom or in the first aid office, and we're not able to provide stability to a person as they travel through the Kauffman Center. So if someone asks us to help them transfer in or out of a wheelchair or ask to lean on us for support, we can say something like, for your safety and mine, I'm not able to provide that physical support. However, you can then feel free to provide guidance and ask them to share the ways you can otherwise support them. So you can ask if they're transferring to a theater seat, do you feel like the wheelchair is close enough to the seat? Is it at a good angle for you? You can let them know that the wheelchair is secure because you've engaged both brakes. You can offer to move the footrest. You could encourage them to move to the edge of the wheelchair seat before they transfer, as that tends to be an easier move. Or if this policy makes their transfer an impossibility for them, you'll simply connect them with your team captain so they can explore alternative seating options where the patron can remain on their device for the length of the performance. So that was our first concept. Before you do anything, ask if you may assist. And on to our second, which is address the patron directly. So patrons with disabilities can certainly attend performances alone if they'd like, and they often do, but sometimes they might have someone with them. So they could be an ASL interpreter for someone who's deaf or hard of hearing, a sighted guide for someone who is blind or has low vision, a personal care attendant, or simply a loved one. It's super important to address the patron directly and not just look at the person that they're with and talk about them like they're not there, right? So the same thing goes for people who may not be at your eye level. So maybe someone's using a wheelchair or is just of a different stature than you. Rather than making them crane their neck to see you, you can consider placing yourself maybe a step back so that you're in their direct field of vision. And that was our second concept. Address the patron directly. Okay, number 3 is a biggie. It is avoid making assumptions. So there are disabilities that we might be able to identify without someone disclosing them to us. But oftentimes, folks have unapparent disabilities, which means we wouldn't even know about them unless they happened to tell us. So some examples of unapparent disabilities could be post-traumatic stress disorder, hearing loss, asthma, migraines, a brain injury, or chronic pain or fatigue. But whether a disability is apparent or not, we still don't know what a person in front of us is experiencing, right? We can't tell what a person needs, wants, or is capable of just by looking at them. It's just not possible. So instead of making assumptions that might be unhelpful or even hurtful, we can do two things. We can ask if and how we can help so that the patron has the opportunity to buy into our assistance. So we can simply ask, would you like any assistance? If they say no, we can tell them we hope they enjoy their visit. And then if they say yes, we can ask, how can I best help? And let them drive from there. And secondly, we can provide an accessible option to everyone whenever possible. So, for example, if we're stationed by a staircase, we want to let everyone know where the elevator is as well. And here's the cool thing about accessibility: by offering options to everyone equally, we can help folks who do and do not identify as having a disability. So, offering the stairs and the elevator allows the person who just had knee surgery an option that might work best for them too. It even helps the person whose feet hurt from wearing high heels all day. So, oftentimes, accessibility can truly benefit everyone. And now we all know that for all of the many, many, many patron interactions that we get right, there are sometimes ones we don't. Some of you might remember this example from last year, and it's because it is always front of mind for me, and I just keep it close to my heart in everything that we do. This was a patron who was in her 20s, and she shared her experience with us her very first time at the Kauffman Center. She has a chronic illness, which is an unapparent disability, and she didn't realize how far the walk into the building was going to be. By the time she got to the top of the escalator on the plaza lobby, she was absolutely exhausted, couldn't take another step. So as she's standing there trying to catch her breath, someone starts yelling at her across the plaza lobby. They're waving their arms and they're saying, "Hurry up, you're late." And I'm going to guess that they just saw some young person who didn't appear to be concerned with the fact that they were late to this performance, and they acted on that assumption. And the patron was absolutely mortified. This was their very first experience here. So it's incredibly important to remember that we never know what the person in front of us is going through or what it took for them to get here to come to this performance. So instead of rushing this person or making them feel bad for being late, which isn't going to change anything anyway, they're still running late. Instead, we could say something like, "May I scan your ticket and help you find the best path to your seat? I would love for you to catch the opening number." So that's our third concept: avoid making assumptions. All right, and our fourth is hold a typical conversation. So patrons who come through our doors should all be treated with the same high level of care. We can extend respect to each person by avoiding unnecessary labels, invasive questions, or patronizing language. So, unless a patron chooses to tell us more about themselves so that we can better welcome them, we don't need to know just about anymore, right? We don't need to know at what point or how they acquired their disability, how they do certain things, how they feel about it. None of that is necessary for us to provide a positive experience. And we don't need to tell someone that they are inspirational for coming to a performance, because people with disabilities are just that, people. And when we're speaking with patrons, we can just do so in our typical clear, measured voices. No need to slow down our speech, over enunciate, or repeat ourselves unless someone asks us to do so. So we're just holding a typical conversation. And finally, our fifth concept is use person first language. So we use person, or sometimes called people first language, because it literally puts the person first. So we can avoid outdated language that generalizes, like the handicapped. And instead, we can use a phrase that acknowledges their humanity and their individuality first. We say person with a disability. So we've worked with a nonprofit here in Kansas City for many years called The Whole Person. And handout number 3 in your packet is a resource from their team that provides an explanation of person first language as well as some examples. And when we read that, we want to remember that just like all communities, the disability community is not a monolith, right? So individuals may have different preferences for describing their disability, and that is just fine by us. So language is always changing and is deeply personal. And because of that, we can rely less on memorizing lists, and we can just acknowledge what the patron has requested instead of working to remember the exact right phrase to describe their disability. So first, we recognize the person, and then we just say what they need, no label needed. Here are some examples. We could say, I'm with a patron who would like a seat that doesn't require stairs. There are some folks here who need a courtesy wheelchair. A person has requested an assistive listening device. And what do we do if the name of the service they're needing is just not coming to mind? If assistive listening device is just not there on the tip of your tongue in that moment, instead, we can just say what the person needs generally, which is an accessible option. That's our go-to phrase. So an accessible option is sort of our catch-all. So just like we have accessible parking spaces in the garage and accessible seats here in the hall, we can provide accessible options like an elevator instead of stairs, a changing table for an older child, a shorter, less strenuous path, or a seat that's close to an exit. Those are all accessible options. So that is our last concept of this section, which is use person-first language. So now we can review all of the accessibility services that we offer here at the Kauffman Center, and that is handout number 4. So first up are those assistive listening devices, often called ALDs. So these are for patrons who would benefit from amplified or clarified sound while in the hall. We have 3 device options in the gift shop. Patrons can choose to use their own earbuds, use the provided earbuds, or wear a transmitter around their neck that connects to their hearing aids or cochlear implant. So these are available free of charge and without reservation in the gift shop, and patrons just exchange an ID for the device. Next up are our size-inclusive seating options, which we used to refer to as bariatric chairs. So these are for patrons who would be more comfortable in a lower standalone chair. And for those of you who have used these before, you know that the ones in MKT were an orange color, and the ones in Hellsberg Hall were blue. But now we ordered several more this year, and they're all black so that we can use them in either hall. So we've got a lot more at our disposal, which is great. So these have a wider frame and do not have armrests, so they're typically a little easier to get in and out of. If a patron requests one in advance, it will be placed in the hall when they arrive for the performance. If a patron requests one after they arrive, you'll want to connect with your team captain, and they will bring one to your section and place it in an approved location, which is typically in place of one of our designated accessible seats. And we have a new slide for you this year because we are currently testing out booster seats. Who was here for Bluey last weekend? So you are intimately familiar with our brand new booster seats. For those of you who were not here for the delightful Bluey, we now have booster seats that are designed for children or folks of shorter stature and who would benefit from the use of a firm 4-inch tall cushion for their theater seat. So these will be available in the gift shop for most of our typical performances, and they will be set out somewhere on Brandmeier when we expect many, many, many children, such as with 4 performances of Bluey. And we have some more policies and procedures coming, so just keep an eye on your email and future newsletters, and we'll kind of work out our process for issuing those, collecting them, cleaning them, all that good stuff. So keep an eye out for more details. And you all are probably very familiar with these. We have courtesy wheelchairs. These are for patrons who would like a wheelchair, and we have size-inclusive options as well to get to their seat, to move about the building at intermission, and to return to the drop-off drive, north doors, or vestibules of the garage. So these are available free of charge at every entry point to the building, and they're also stored on every level of the building and back hallways. So these are available with or without advanced reservation. And if you're asked to help someone, asked to push someone in a courtesy wheelchair, we'd ask that you keep these best practices in mind. You want to let the patron know your path before you start moving the wheelchair. You want to back into elevators so that patrons are facing forward. And you also want to make sure that the brakes are fully engaged when the patron gets to their destination, making sure everyone's nice and safe. And just a friendly reminder of what we talked about earlier. Remember that Kauffman Center volunteers and staff are unable to lift, carry, or otherwise physically assist with transferring a patron into or out of a wheelchair or perform any personal care attendant services. That's for your safety and theirs. And next up are sensory kits. So these were designed for patrons with sensory sensitivities and really anyone who would like tools to feel grounded and safe in the building. So these are also available free of charge and without advance reservation, and they can exchange their ID for a kit at Coat Check or the gift shop. So each kit comes in a black drawstring bag and has noise muffling headphones, a weighted lap pad, and handheld sensory items. Right now, it's a tube full of glitter and a little net that has a marble inside that's bright neon. You can't miss them. So, two very fun things inside our sensory kits at the moment. And then we also have two spaces called Serenity Rooms in the building. So these were designed for patrons with sensory sensitivities, guardians who would like a quiet space to nurse or comfort a child, and really any patron who would like to take a break from the performance for any reason. They're pretty versatile spaces. So there's comfy seating, an outlet, dimmable lights, more of those fun handheld sensory items, and a monitor so they can watch the performance going on in either hall. And with our two Serenity Rooms, they're exactly the same. And they're located inside MKT mezzanine doors 2 and 5. And they're available free of charge and accessible without advance reservation. If a patron asks to visit a Serenity Room, you'll want to connect them with your team captain because they'll ensure the space isn't already in use. They will point out the features to the patron, and they can also help ensure that they return to the hall safely and at an appropriate time in the program. All right, everyone's favorite topic. Let's talk about restrooms. We have about 196 stalls in the building, and we have accessible stalls on every level. So there's also a single stall restroom or a family restroom on every level except level 4, Brandmeier. Each family restroom has an infant changing table and more space than a typical restroom stall. And in addition to the infant changing tables in the family restrooms, we also have a universal changing table. So that's designed for infants, older children, and adults in the mezzanine intermission lobby family restroom. That's level 5. And patrons, of course, don't need us to grant them access to that space, but you might be asked to point them in that direction. Alternatively, patrons can also use the medical cot that serves as a second universal changing table in the first aid office, which is directly across from the volunteer office on level 2. And this is also a great place to administer medicine. So there's a medical cot, privacy curtain, and a sharps and diaper disposal system. So a team captain can help a patron enter this space as they need to first make sure that KC Medical isn't assisting another patron inside. And finally, we are happy to offer a wide range of other accessibility services upon request. So patrons can request ASL interpretation, audio description, captioning, any other services they need ahead of time of any performance, concert, or event by calling the ticket office, or they can email our brand shiny new accessibility@kaufmancenter.org. And finally, our goal when it comes to inclusion and accessibility is always to go above and beyond what is required and avoid just ticking a box and saying, we've done it, we're accessible, and we're inclusive, right? We want every aspect of our patron service to be exemplary. And that's why we're really grateful to have a volunteer corps made up of really compassionate and kind and truly dedicated people. And you all make this a really special place for everyone in our community. So thank you for all of your care and attention today and this season. Thanks so much.